very excited. Change and we'll be there. We gotta do something. Nice guys.
I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. No, this is great.
Hi. I was on the time. Got about 7 hours station. Keep going. Thank you.
Mr. Good dinner last night. Some Italian No, we stayed right
That's exactly how you do it. That's it. Thank you. And see, they said nobody said that I made it. I've always and then, of course, their sister Minnie was the she became the Empress of Russia. Then not the Empress. She fled.
Why?
Hello.
Hi.
Lars, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. How you doing?
Fine.
Good stuff, huh, man?
Hi, Lars. Craig Snyder.
Patrick Poole.
Well, when I saw you were on the agenda, I thought he could come from Copenhagen, I could take him from Florida. That's
Been there for a
the
week, so we interviewed Lars. Good.
I just read your. I'm Diana West. A long time. Very good.
Very nice to meet you too. We talk and we go with stuff. My pleasure. Oh, did you? Okay. Jason. Jason Patrick. No, I mean,
so I did that. I just made sure. So available on the internet.
yeah.
checked your office. Okay. How long will you be here?
I think this is
Probably more. Yeah, we're, so, a couple ideas. Maybe we should talk afterwards. Just some thoughts? Well, stuff that's coming up. Yeah, yeah.
We're going to have several wonderful presentations before we show you the film Fitna. I will be joined here by my friend and colleague Diana West, a syndicated columnist, author of Death of the Woman. We will then hear from Lars Hedegaard of the International Free Press Society, and of course our featured guest of honor, Geert Wilders. Whose name I have pronounced in every possible permutation, but I'm told that is the correct one, so we'll all work at perfecting it. We are in the midst of a titanic struggle, one most of us are aware of, if at all, only peripherally. It is a struggle between a theopolitical legal program that authoritative Islam calls Sharia, on the one hand, and on the other, everything we hold dear, especially our freedoms, our freedom of worship, our freedom of assembly, our freedom in this country most especially to pursue happiness in whatever way we see fit, our freedom to have representative government under the principle of the rule of law made by man. Underpinning all of these freedoms, of course, is the freedom of speech and its associated freedom of the press. Our guest of honor is in the front lines of this struggle. Geert has become truly a leader in the fight to protect and preserve not only his country, but the West more generally against the assault that is being made on our freedoms by Sharia and its adherents. It is an assault that is relentless and comprehensive and truly a threat to this country and all, as I say, in the free world. With his film Fitna, this Dutch parliamentarian has helped arouse his countrymen and freedom-loving people the world over to the danger posed by those who take the Quran literally, as Sharia demands, and who insist that all Muslims and non-Muslims alike submit to their brand of totalitarianism. He has in the process also aroused the wrath of the Sharia adherents, who seek to prevent the sort of consciousness raising and debate Mr. Wilders seeks to simulate. Their threats against him and against governments who have protected him and the right of free speech, and thereby allowed him to present his film and to engage in the sort of debate that is so clearly necessary, are threats against all of us, not just against him. Every concession that is made in the face of such threats is an abridgment. We must not permit of our freedoms as well as his. The prosecution against Geert Wilders is simply appalling, as are the thoughtfulness, the threats, the death threats not least, but most especially effectively in the past. If we had, I submit to you, Geert would not be facing prosecution in his own country and the prospect of it elsewhere as well. We at the Center for Security Policy are extremely proud to welcome our friend and colleague to America, a country that still does permit these freedoms to be expressed. It is today, perhaps more than ever before, the case that America is the last best hope of mankind as we confront this barbaric and seditious program of Sharia here as well as elsewhere around the world. We salute Geert for his courage and leadership and are thrilled to be part of the International Free Press Society at this critical, indeed ethical, juncture. It was very gratifying that yesterday Mr. Wilders had an opportunity to address members of the House and Senate and staff in the capital of the United States. It was a shining moment for our government, and we hope it will be but the first of many such appearances by Mr. Wilders in America as part of a new and urgently needed campaign to help the American people, and indeed people all over the world, understand and counter the threat from Sharia. With that, I'll be delighted to welcome Dr. West, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I welcome you on behalf of the International Free Press Society, the other co-sponsor of today's event. You'll be hearing very shortly from Mr. Wilders. Besides being a member of the Parliament in the Netherlands, also the leader of the Party for Freedom there, is also a member of the International Free Press Society's Board of Advisors. And we will also be hearing from my colleague on the Free Press Society, Ross Hedegaard, who is a journalist from Denmark. They will both be addressing the impact of what we call hate speech laws in Europe. In Mr. Wilders' case, the direct consequences, which include his upcoming criminal prosecution by the Dutch government, the British government's very recent decision to bar him from the United Kingdom, and there's even a Jordanian call for his extradition to Jordan to stand trial on what they call blasphemy charges, all for what he has said. Then there are the more indirect consequences of hate speech laws in Europe, on what is discussed and debated in the public square, and that is something that Lars Hedegaard will be addressing. The ideal speech protections we have come to realize lie in the spirit of the American First Amendment, which we believe may serve as a kind of lodestar for efforts to repeal hate speech and blasphemy laws in Europe. While Mr. Wilders would clearly live and breathe more easily with such speech protections, it's important for all of us who are here today to witness his speech to note that even under the existing legal constraints, the governmental efforts to further constrain his speech and free movement, and of course, something I have not mentioned, the continual Islamic death threats that have robbed him of his personal freedom, he continues to believe in, claim, and exercise his freedom of speech as an unalienable right that neither laws, governments, nor death threats can take away from him. Americans have been blessed and protected and enriched by unprecedented in human history speech protections, but I would suggest that we Americans don't always trust in these protections. Even without the repressing forces of actual hate speech laws as we see in Europe, Americans have increasingly submitted to personal and institutional codes of self-censorship, partly under the influence of what we know as political correctness, and more recently under the influence of specifically Islamic codes, speech codes. We obviously don't need a campaign to install a First Amendment here, but there is a crucial need in this country to reestablish, or perhaps better, to reassert the full range of political expression and debate that it guarantees. And I thank you.
Well, thank you, Frank. Thank you, Diana. Ladies and gentlemen, we live at a time when free speech is under the heaviest attack we have experienced since the Nazis tried to impose their absolutist rule 2 generations ago. At a time when we should be exchanging views and information about the real threats to our society and our civilization and way of life, Western countries and international organizations are busy trying to shut down free discourse. Hate speech, blasphemy laws are being brushed off or reintroduced as a means to regulate and discipline what may be said. It seems to me that what is politically correct ought to be determined by the electorate when it has had the opportunity to listen to all arguments and has been presented with all relevant information. But we're going about it the other way around. First, our governments tell us what is politically correct. Then they decide, or then it decides what may be said without fear of ostracism or criminal prosecution. There's no better proof of that than the case of Geert Wilders. It's about time that we return to the roots of our Judeo-Christian civilization and to the founding fathers of free speech. Let me quote from a pamphlet published by John Milton in 1644. The language may be a bit dated, but the ideas are as fresh and relevant as when they were first penned. I quote, "Where there is much desire to learn, there of necessity will be much arguing, much writing, many opinions. For opinion in good men is but knowledge in the making." And further, let truth and falsehood grapple. Whoever knew truth put to the worst in a free and open encounter. Truth needs no policies, nor stratagems, nor licensings to make her victorious. Milton goes on, "If we think to regulate printing, thereby to rectify manners, we must regulate all recreations and pastimes that is delightful to man. No music must be heard, nor song said or sung, but what is grave and Doric. There must be licensing of dances that no gesture, motion, or deportment be taught by youth, but what by their allowance shall be thought honest." End of quote. That was John Milton in 1644, at the time of the English Revolution. How ironic, how sad, how despicable that 365 years later, we should again be discussing the need to license opinions, to regulate, rectify manners, and indeed to place upon ourselves this iron yoke of outward conformity, to quote Milton once again. For that is precisely what we do when we introduce laws on hate speech and blasphemy, when the state outlaws certain opinions and put people in jail for poisoning them. Where does all this end? As Milton pointed out, there's no end to it. Next, they'll be regulating the internet, they'll be scouring emails for wrong opinions, they will invade private sphere and listen to what people say in their private homes and places of work. For make no mistake, if you regulate what may be said in public, you'll simply drive the frank exchange of opinions underground. So the logical outcome will be a police state with millions of snooping Stasi informers. We have already seen such cases in Europe. It is high time that we, the people, put a stop to this. A society that regulates speech is a society unable to solve its problems, let alone identify them. And such a society is doomed. This is not the kind of world that we want to leave to our children and grandchildren. It's high time that we put a stop to speech rules and political correctness. We need to repeal all hate speech and blasphemy laws that are now being reduced to take away our liberty. We in the International Free Press Society will commit all our efforts and resources to achieving this objective. Thank you very much. It's on my great honor to introduce the man of the hour and the man of the year, Mr. Geert Wilders. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, United States of America, and more especially, thank you, immigration authorities, for letting me into this great country. It's always a pleasure to cross a border without being sent back on the first time. I feel very honored to have the privilege to speak and to show my documentary, my short documentary, Fitna, all around the United States. And indeed, not only here today, but also yesterday in the US Senate. Because today, the dearest of our many freedoms is under attack, all throughout Europe. Free speech is unfortunately no longer a given. What we once considered a natural element of our existence, our birthright, is now something we once again have to battle for. And as you might know, I will be prosecuted in my home country because of my short film Fitna, my remarks regarding Islam, and my view concerning what some call a religion of peace. So a few years from now, I might be a criminal. And on top of that, the Kingdom of Jordan also threatens to prosecute me for insulting Islam and ask for an extradition. But whether or not I will end up in jail is not the most pressing issue. I gave up my personal freedom 4.5 years ago. I'm under full-time police protection ever since because of death threats from Muslims and terrorist groups linked to Al-Qaeda. And in the last few years, I lived in different safe houses, army barracks, and yes, even prison cells in order to be safe. But it's not about me. It's not about Geert Wilders. The real question is, will free speech be put behind bars? And the larger question for the West is, will we leave our children, will we leave Europe's children, the values of Rome, of Athens and Jerusalem, or the values of Mecca, Gaza and Tehran? And this is what video blogger Pat Condell said in one of his latest YouTube appearances. He said, if I talked about Muslims the way their holy book talks about me, I'd be arrested for hate speech. Now, Mr. Condell, as we all know, is a stand-up comedian. But in the video, he is dead serious, and the joke is on us. Hate speech will always be used against the people defending the West in order to please and in order to appease Muslims. They can say whatever they want. Throw gays from apartment buildings, kill Jews, slaughter the infidel, destroy Israel, jihad against the West, whatever their book tells them. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake. My prosecution is a full-fledged attack by the left on freedom of speech in order to please Muslims. In fact, it was started by a member of the Dutch Labour Party. And if you read what the Court of Amsterdam has written about me, you read the same text that those cultural relativists produce. In fact, cultural relativism is the serious and the most dangerous disease in Europe today. Most of our politicians in Europe believe that all cultures are equal. But let me tell you, they are not. Our Western culture, based on Christianity, on Judaism, on humanism, is in every aspect better than the Islamic culture. It's like the brave apostate Wafa Sultan, who is residing in LA, as you know, today. It's like she said, it's a comparison between a culture of reason and a culture of barbarism. Back to my country. How low can we go in the Netherlands? About my prosecution, the Wall Street Journal noted, and I quote, "This is no small victory for Islamic regimes seeking to export their censorship laws to wherever Muslims reside." And the journal concluded that the Netherlands, accepting the free speech standards of Saudi Arabia, I stand correct in my observation that, and I quote again, "Muslim immigration is eroding traditional Dutch liberties." Now, if the Wall Street Journal has the moral clarity to see that my prosecution is the logical outcome of our disastrous, self-hating, cultural, relativist immigration policies, then why can't the European liberal establishment see the same thing? Why aren't they getting at least a little bit scared by the latest news out of, for instance, the United Kingdom, where the Muslim population is growing 10 times faster than the rest of society? Why don't they care? The answer is they don't care because they are blinded by their political correctness and their cultural relativism. Their disdain of the West is so much greater than the appreciation of our many liberties, and therefore they are willing to sacrifice everything. The left once stood for women's rights, for gay rights, for equality and democracy, and now they favor immigration policies that will end all this. And many of us has even lost their decency. Elite politicians in Europe, even in Amsterdam, have no problem to participate in or finance demonstrations where Muslims shout, "Death to the Jews." 70 years after Auschwitz, they know of no shame. 2 weeks ago, I tried to get into Britain, a fellow EU country. I was invited to give a speech in the House of Lords in the UK Parliament. However, upon arrival at London Heathrow Airport, I was refused entry to the United Kingdom, detained for a couple of hours and sent back on the first plane to the Netherlands. The reason I would threaten community harmony, whatever that means, community harmony, and therefore public security. And all this because of my film, Fitman. An absolute disgrace. The British Home Secretary even publicly admitted on BBC TV that she never watched my film, Fitman, but decided to ban me from the United Kingdom anyway. And if you follow the news today, you will see that the British have allowed the spokesman of Hezbollah, the Lebanese terroristic organization, to enter their country. So Hezbollah and terrorists are welcome, and parliamentarians are not. If I would have been admitted to the United Kingdom, if they would have allowed me to speak in the House of Lords, I would have loved the audience to remind them of a great man, a great American, who once spoke in the House of Commons. In 1982, President Reagan gave a speech very few people liked in the UK. President Reagan called upon the West to reject communism, to defend freedom, and he introduced the phrase evil empire. And Reagan's speech stands out as a clarion call to preserve our liberties. And I quote President Reagan. He said, "If history teaches anything, it teaches self-delusion in the face of unpleasant facts is folly. And what Reagan, of course, meant is that you cannot turn away from history. You cannot escape the dangers of ideologies that are out to destroy you. Denial is no option. Islam is the communism of today. And it's not just a European problem. Even here in the United States, you see that people, writers, politicians, authors, are sued in many ways by people who don't like what they say or what they write. For instance, former Congressman Cass Bellingham, he was sued for defamation. For instance, Bruce Steph, who was briefing the NYPD about 9/11 and the threat of Islam, he was sued. I think that in Europe, we should defend our freedom of speech like you Americans do. In Europe, freedom of speech should be extended instead of restricted. And of course, calling for violence or unjustly yelling fire in a crowded theater still have to be punished. But the right to criticize ideologies or religions are necessary conditions for a vital democracy. As George Orwell once said, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Let us defend freedom of speech. Let us gain strength and work hard to become even stronger. Millions think like you and me. Millions think that our liberty is precious, that democracy is better than Sharia. And after all, why? Why should we be afraid? Our many freedoms and our prosperity are the results of centuries of endeavor, centuries of hard work, centuries of sacrifice. We do not stand alone. Ladies and gentlemen, our enemies should know we will never, never apologize for being free men. And we will never give in. We will never give in. We will never surrender. There is no stronger power than the force of free men fighting for the great cause of liberty. Because freedom is the birthright of all men. Freedom must prevail, and freedom will prevail. Thank you very much.
With those stirring words in our ears, we will now present Geert Wilders' film Fitna. It's 15 minutes long. We'll then have an opportunity for questions and answers with the filmmaker. And I guess let's go to the video team. Thank you very much for taking this aboard firsthand, not through filters, not through other people's portrayals of this film, but firsthand. And now to discuss it with you and to engage in the kind of conversation that he has been trying to foster not only in his own country but around the world. We ask
the Palestinians are far more the underdog, far more popular. But I believe that Israel is on the brink of jihad. Israel is on the front line of jihad. And the jihad is not about territory. The conflict, as I see it, between Israel and the Arab states or the Palestinians is not a territorial conflict. It's about jihad. And if the Palestinians would get their way, which I hope they never will, to seize Israel, the next step will be Europe, as it is today. So it's not about territory. Israel is on the front line of jihad, and in fact, the war against Israel is not a war against Israel. The war against Israel is a war against the West, is a war against us all. So even if it doesn't make me the most popular guy when it comes to defending Israel, I always will. Thank you.
Lena Rosenwald, editor-in-chief, www.hudsonnewyork.org. This question, I guess, is for anybody who can help with it. I don't know that there's the Durban 2 coming up,
Yeah.
in Geneva, and there are rumors that there's an agenda in the platform to restrict freedom of speech. And what can we do about that? Does anybody know anything about that?
Yeah. Well, Durban 2 indeed is a very nasty and a very sad thing to happen. Freedom of speech indeed is being restricted there, as it was done before. It's not only against freedom of speech, it's also an anti-Semite, anti-Israel kind of gathering. And I think that government should boycott it. This was what I would do. Government should not go. And give a signal. And of course, if you look to the United Nations resolution they have implemented, it's all very much influenced by the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Conference. And this, ladies and gentlemen, as I see it, is one of the worst organizations in the world. They are forming one of the largest blocs in the United Nations General Assembly, and they have an enormous influence. And let me tell you, because some countries or organizations see them as a respectful partner, well, they are not. In the Cairo Declaration, a declaration from 1990, if I'm correct, about human rights in the Arab world, the organization, the OIC, made a declaration about human rights, and in the first article and in the last article of this declaration, it says that the countries who subscribe to this declaration, all the Arab and Islamic countries, are in favor of human rights, but human rights, according to them, is restricted to the Sharia. Now, we all know that Sharia means the end of freedom. That Sharia is the exact opposite of human rights. So Durban 2, the OIC, the United Nations General Assembly resolutions dictated by the OIC bloc is something that we should fight against, and certainly not attempt.
Frank Hendrik with the Netherlands Press Association. I was wondering if you got here in the United States a lot of support for your position to ban the Quran. And I was wondering, you are also here to raise funds. I was wondering how much money did you were you able to raise here? And don't you see a potential conflict of interest if you have a lot of money coming in from abroad?
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Dutch press. Thank you, sir. I almost feel like being home again. But still, you deserve an answer even if you are from the Dutch press. Let me be fair. I'm not going to tell you how much money I raised. In fact, I didn't get 1 cent yet, but it's promising that some people, individuals, but also organizations are willing to help me in the enormous cost that I certainly will face, both in defending myself in the Dutch courts and also, for instance, when I have to appeal against this crazy decision of Gordon Brown, or should I? I'm very happy you asked this question because I can put it in perspective, as I did all week, meeting my American friends. And I told them that indeed the red line when it comes to the freedom of speech is incitement violence, incitement of immediate violence, which is the Quran unfortunately is full of, incitement of violence. But more important, I explained in the Dutch context, and I told them that when, and you should know, that when in the 70s in the Netherlands, by a decision of our Supreme Court, that Mein Kampf was banned. Mein Kampf was banned under the same Article 137 of our Dutch Penal Code. The left in Holland, the left in the Netherlands were very happy. They liked it so much. A fascist book, which indeed it is, was banned in the Netherlands. So when I proposed it 2 years ago in the Dutch Parliament to ban the Quran, I made a comparison to Mein Kampf. And I told the left politicians in the Netherlands, where are you now? 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you were so satisfied, and we did not hear you complain for 1 minute that this terrible book, Mein Kampf, was outlawed. And now we have another book, and also a book from a totalitarian ideology. And it has the same incitement of violence. And where are you? You should be the first, not me, Geert Wilders. You should be the first to ban it, or either lift the ban on Mein Kampf. Either way. Well, okay, it was okay for Mein Kampf, but it's not okay for banning the Quran. So in this Dutch context, many people, even in the United States, who are not in favor of banning books, understood. Man. Sorry, so, sir.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Witten. I'm just a private citizen.
Yeah.
What penalty do you face if you're convicted in the Netherlands, and who's defending you?
Yeah, well, according to the Dutch law, I could get up to 18 months or 2 years sentence in jail for hate speech, insulting groups, and I believe the third charge is discrimination. This is what I face. But fortunately, I have one of the best, if not the best, lawyer in the Netherlands, Mr. Bram Moscovici. He's well known in my country, defending cases like, well, there are no cases like this. So he's very good. It's also very expensive. But he's there, and he's going to defend me. But I'm positive, I'm really positive that I will be acquitted. If it's not by the lower court, I mean, there was a decision of the Court of Appeal in Amsterdam, and as you might know, after the Dutch Public Prosecutor's Office, after 1 year of thinking and getting advices from all over the society, they decided not to prosecute me. They said Wilders has done nothing wrong. We may not like what the guy did, but he did not cross any line when it comes to our penal code. And then people went, you don't have such a provision in your US laws, but in the Netherlands, we have an Article 12 of the Dutch Penal Code, which says that if you make a complaint and the public prosecutor office decides not to prosecute you, you can appeal. You can appeal on what we call an Article 12 procedure, and you can go to the Court of Appeal. And the Court of Appeal ordered the public prosecutor, overruled them to prosecute me for hate speech. So I now went, I will do it one of these days, to present my matter to the Supreme Court of the Netherlands because we believe they made some procedural mistakes, but if not, I will be subpoenaed soon. Once again, a very crazy thing in Holland, if you are a radical imam or a radical Muslim, you can say anything. If you make fitna, well, you saw fitna. I don't think anybody who makes fitna deserves to get 2 years in jail. It's ridiculous. So,
Michael Hayne, Life Rejoice. Could you describe for us some of the threats and hardships you had to deal with?
It goes from emails who seem rather innocent. Often are people from 12, 13, 14 years in their pajamas at night saying that I should be beheaded, something like that. But there were also movies on the internet, and the Dutch security forces, but please forgive me if I cannot go into details, also told me last year after Vietnam that unfortunately there were also more serious organizations abroad linked to Al-Qaeda that had more concrete plans. Not only a threat to me personally, but also a threat to my country in large. Once again, it's not only about me, it's also about the Netherlands. And maybe not do now, if I would moderate my voice or my point of view, then, ladies and gentlemen, the terrorists, the people who are not using democratic means but are using the threat of violence, they will win. And terrorists will, at least I will never let them win. At a lunch on Monday by the Hudson Institute, Nina Roosevelt, Mr. London, and we also showed Fitna, and we had a very nice question and answer and discussions. We had many interviews. I was a couple of times on CNN, on Fox News, 2 programs. I had a meeting, a luncheon with the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. We had from the Boston Globe till the Michael Graham, the Laura Ingraham radio show. It was really very, very nice. But also, which was, I think, one of the highlights also of this visit, was in Boston, where we went, and the rabbi expected 75 people, and there were 220 people. It was a crowded house, and people were so enthusiastic. We showed Fitna, and we had a discussion, and it was really very, very impressive. I liked it a lot. I had, once again, many interviews with Christian Broadcast Network, Laura Ingraham. I met John Bolton in a private meeting in CPAC after his wonderful speech yesterday. And of course, at the kind invitation of Senator Kyle, we had, and also other senators and members of the House present, we had this meeting, which I'm very proud of, indeed, to be able to show Fitna and have a debate at the heart of your democracy in the US Senate. And have a question